Hey everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. So thank you for joining us today. My name is Jennifer Gill, and I'm the Vice President of Product Marketing here at Skyhawk Security. And today we're going to talk about the features in our product, specifically around automation and consolidating all the information you get from your logs, etc., and how we can really help you upskill your SOC. So with that, let's go through the agenda. So we'll be talking about, I'll be introducing the speakers. I do have Jean Perry, our Director of Solution Engineering, here with me to help today. We'll introduce Skyhawk, in case you're not familiar, and we'll go through kind of a day in the life of the SOC. It's just one slide, so we're probably really oversimplifying it. But I would really like to hear comments from the audience members if you are in the SOC. Like, what is it like for you? Are we hitting the mark or are we missing the mark? Let us know. I really want to know that. And then we'll go into the product. So how the Skyhawk Synthesis Security Platform can help you operationalize and automate as many of your daily tasks as possible to make things easier for you. So we'll look at the AI-based autonomous purple team. We'll look at the CDR, how that works, and also the automated response. And then I'll turn it over to Jean for a demo, and we'll be focusing in on the specific attributes that help you upskill your SOC. And then we can talk about next steps. Throughout the webinar, if you want to use the chat feature to ask us a question, please do so, because I'm sure we'll have plenty of time at the end for questions. I know we slotted this webinar for about an hour. I'm going to guess it's going to be about 35 minutes, so we will be able to give you some time back in your day as well. So first, here's our speakers. So I'm joined by Jean Perry. He's our Director of Sales Engineering. He has over 20 years of experience working with customers, helping them achieve their business objectives and aligning them with their business needs. And then there's me, the Vice President of Product Marketing, with over 20 years of high-tech experience working at various companies. And Jean and I have worked together as well. Okay, so who is Skyhawk? So if you're not familiar with Skyhawk, we're an AI-based cloud threat detection and response platform, along with our AI-based purple team. So this is a really revolutionary approach to cloud security. We support the major clouds, Microsoft Azure, Google, AWS, as well as Kubernetes. And we have a broad global customer base. We help customers who have very small environments, as well as customers that have very large environments. And although we do see quite a bit of success in heavily regulated verticals, of course, if you're in the cloud, we can help you. So if you're on any of these platforms, we can help you with your cloud security. So awards and recognition. So we recently were nominated a CRN Stellar Startup in 2024. So we got that last year as well. So that was 2 years in a row. We've only applied for it for 2 years, so I'm very excited about that. We get recognized in various publications, including Forbes and CISO 9. We got invited to participate in the Pitchapalooza, which the Cloud Security Alliance puts on at RSA. And then with the Cloud Security Awards, we were a finalist in all 4 categories, and we won Cloud Security Innovator of the Year. And that was with our AI-based autonomous purple team. So it's a really revolutionizing technology. So again, in the chat, if you want to put in your feedback on this, love to hear about it. So this is what our view of the kind of the typical day in the SOC is. So you're getting way too many alerts, and you're trying to figure out which ones are real and fix those quickly before they lead to a breach. There's very little context. So from the cloud or the application, so you're unsure of what the relationship between these things are. And then the burnout is real, because you need to be successful. You need to identify these threats before there is a breach. It takes hours to analyze an incident. One of our clients said before Skyhawk, it took them up to 12 hours to sort through the data to figure out that, yes, this is a real incident and I need to take action, or no, this is just a benign activity or someone doing something for the very first time, and it's okay that that happens. And then the last part is, as the SOC, although you're primarily responsible for the security of the organization, you have other teams kind of contributing to it, like CloudDevOps, that don't necessarily report to you, but they have a role in the security of the cloud, and you're trying to convince them of that. And that's just exhausting, because they're like, I have this deadline, I have to get this application out. I'm not concerned with what you're telling me. Jean, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, it's great comments here, Jennifer, and I think where we really help with the SOC efficiency, specifically with incident responders or threat hunters and analysts, is really including in our alerts. We do all the heavy lifting in terms of all of the stitching of every single event and trail of the attacker is in the alert, along with all of the forensics and IOCs and IOBs that are typically needed by the analysts or threat hunters. But instead of them having to go search data lakes and use all kinds of tools to do that, we provide them all of that right inside of the single alert.
Great. Yeah, so that's one of the key ways that we're really able to help upscale the SOC and help all of you focus on what matters. We'll start with the AI-based red team. And you'll see that the red team is going to fight the blue team. So what the red team does is it maps out the environment. It figures out where your crown jewel assets are. It maps out those paths. The red team then fights the blue team, which is our cloud threat detection and response. Where the red team slips past the blue team is where we create pre-verified automated response. We're able to prioritize what needs automated response based on the contextualized cloud asset library. So those assets, it's going to say, these are the ones that are important. These are the ones that maybe in test environment are not as important. So that's where we're going to prioritize those automated responses. If you look in the center of the slide, you'll see the layers of the blue team. So the first layer is malicious and suspicious behavior indicators. That's where we kind of correlate all the information and look for what's different. It's kind of an indication of compromise. We take all that information and sequence it together, and we look at the overall risk of that sequence. And that's where we see the intent. As it becomes more malicious, we keep an eye on it, and then we promote that to an alert. One of the layers, the third layer, that we look at to prioritize the malicious intent is we've trained large language models to look at the overall risk profile of the sequence. And once it reaches a specific threshold, it will get promoted to an alert. So that is a very new way of using large language models. We actually implemented that in March of 2023. So one of the very early uses of LLMs in cloud security was done by Skyhawk. Okay, so here we go. So this is how the blue team works in just a little bit more detail, because those three layers are driven by machine learning models. So how we create those models is we collect data sources and telemetry from many different sources around your cloud environment. So we're pulling a large volume of information. We sort through that information, and we start to enrich and build our baseline models. So then once we have the models in place, we sort through the data and we're like, this looks a little interesting. We start to sequence it. And then the machine learning models create and evaluate the risk of the sequence as mentioned, and then I'll get to the point where, okay, this needs to be an alert. These machine learning models are built custom for your cloud environments, and they're updated every single day to ensure as your cloud architecture changes, it's in line with those changes to ensure it's detecting an actual threat in your cloud. So the machine learning models look very different across our customer bases because all those customers have very different cloud architectures. Because we're not saying that something is an alert and one cloud is the same as another. It's not. We want to make sure we find the malicious activities in your cloud specifically. So it's really powerful. I'm actually continually impressed with the data science team when we talk about the things that they do with the machine learning models. It's really advanced. So this is an overview of the purple team. So we start with, we discover all the assets in the environment, as I mentioned. So it uses the telemetry to figure out where are the crown jewel assets. Then it analyzes the least resistant paths to those crown jewels and creates attack recipes. Those recipes are then executed against the cloud threat detection that we just outlined. So from that, we can understand the defenses. We'll understand where the cloud threat detection will hold, where it will find the threats, where it will get past. So it'll evaluate your defenses, it identifies the posture gaps, create the automated responses that we recommended, and then it will also update those machine learning models. So that's another way that we update the machine learning models is we want to look at as the cloud architecture changes, what are the different attack recipes? How are the new ways that the threat actor can get to those crown jewels? Gene, would you add anything to this slide?
Yeah, so I think, Jennifer, the biggest thing that I can add here is that we're going to go through this step by step in the demo, where you're going to see the first steps, and I'll explain the first steps that the red team takes and shows you those results in terms of building a digital twin and creating that, and then we'll go through both our simulated blue team and, as I sometimes refer to it, our live blue team in terms of our live alerting or CDR capabilities. Thanks, Jennifer.
Yeah, no, perfect. Great add. And this is one of the ways that we can use automation. So with the automated response. So we've heard from our customers that they don't feel comfortable using automation because they can't trust two things. First, they can't trust that the alert is actually an alert and is representative of a behavior they don't want to see in the cloud. So they can't trust that trigger of the automation. And then the automation itself, they wonder if it will make the problem worse, because what's going to be the impact on production? What's going to happen? Is it going to impact someone's job? Is it going to take down something, a website, something important? So although security teams would love to use automation and make things in their life so much easier, they can't trust it because of the trigger and the response. With Skyhawk, as we talked about in the overall continuous proactive purple team, we're verifying that the alert is real. In the simulation twin environment, which is, it's not your production environment, this is a complete AI-based environment where we execute the red team and the blue team together. We know we don't want that behavior to happen. So we know we want that to be an alert. And then we also do the pre-tested automated response. And we know in the AI-based environment, it's not going to impact production. It's totally mapped to a verified alert, and it will execute the automated scripts at machine speed. So not only can you trust that this is malicious because we've seen it in the AI-based environment, you can also trust that this is going to fix it because we've seen it in the AI-based environment, and it's going to work really fast. So at machine speed. So these are the things to look at in Gene's demo. So we're going to look at increasing the overall efficiency and effectiveness of the team. So he'll show you within the attack sequence all the data that's behind it, so you can see it's a real attack. You'll be able to focus on those specific attacks. You're not sorting through all the data in your environment. You're looking at these specific alerts. You can respond at machine speed, and all the information in the UI will help improve security communications across the team. So you're going to be able to bring this information to the cloud development team and say, hey, here's how your work is impacting the security. Can we work together to fix that? So you're going to have that information, that evidence available to you in a very simple way for collaboration. So, and with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen and have it go over to Gene.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. Let me, one moment here. I'll bring that up. And Jennifer, perhaps you can help me out and just confirm for me that you do see, in fact, my screen with I'm on the threat detection purple team.
Yes.
Results here. Okay, great. So let's jump into this, and for all the attendees here, first of all, thank you for your time today. Secondly, I'm going to start. It typically makes the most sense, I think, to begin with the purple team, and specifically talking about our AI red team. right? And before we jump into one or multiple of these scenarios and dig into the details on some of them, just want to talk a little bit about the red team and also what you see here in terms of some of the columns. So the first thing, when we onboard the red team via one AWS account or AWS org or multiple cloud accounts, the key thing that the red team does is create what we refer to as, it creates a digital twin or a virtual sandbox of your cloud environment. And this is everything from, that it includes everything from users, permissions, roles, security policies, all of those permissions, topology of the networks, assets like databases, VMs, EC2 instances, buckets, etc., etc. So it literally creates a digital twin of your environment in the Skyhawk, in the Skyhawk cloud. And that's where our AI red team then starts to look at and utilize. You see here the initial access column and all the different types of methods and techniques that the red team will then utilize to build these attack scenarios or recipes that we talk about here. And you can see there are several types that we'll look to. We have integration with vulnerability management systems, where we can, the red team will look at and analyze your open critical vulnerabilities or CVEs in your environment, and utilizing potential malicious techniques in that simulated digital twin environment, show you the actual attacks and permutations of the attacks that are verified in the environment. You'll also see there are other techniques that we'll look at as well. One of the other really interesting ones is the third party, where the red team will assess all of the third party trusted access that you've granted in your cloud, and look at and show you the potential for verified weaponized business critical assets that could be exploited from a data exfiltration perspective. So why don't we jump into one of the scenarios, and one of the key things I mentioned that we're going to touch upon here is we don't just show you, while we do show you here as the default view in every scenario you first open, you see the timeline view or the steps that a malicious actor would take in this particular attack once they're able to gain access to and step through the door into your cloud environment or breach the perimeter of your cloud. And you'll see each of the elements as they go through. In this case, it was an actual CVE that we'll see in the details of this, how they're able to gain access to our cloud through remote code execution and reverse shell of the exploiting the open CVE. And you'll see then that there was a new Lambda that was launched with an assigned role by the attacker, and then accessing and assuming multiple roles, where this finally culminated in a access of a database. Now, I want to stop here for a moment, because this is where we start to show you the different permutations that we mentioned. And this is one of the key benefits and differences of what we're doing with the AI red team versus some of the other terms you may hear out there in terms of toxic combinations, where we're showing you the dynamics of how an attacker would behave and continue to move through an environment versus a static theoretical attack path, right? So when we talk about the permutations of the attack, it's really key to understand. And in this case, where I click on the plus number from the timeline view of any of the assets here, and I can see that not only do I see my asset that's part of the timeline view, this RDS database called ENV5 in this environment, but I can see that there are also two other databases that are susceptible to the same attack or permutations of this attack path. And you can see that in other examples where there could be multiple roles, lambdas, etc. Literally, there could be multiple permutations on any element within the attack path. Let's take a detailed look. I'm going to move over to the red team view, because this is really where you see all of the detail of this particular attack playbook that's been generated on the fly and will continue to be updated, right? Because that's the other key difference with our red team, is that it's continuously running and analyzing the environment. Not only the first time where it builds that digital twin, it's not a static digital twin or virtual sandbox of your environment. It's continuously updating that digital twin with changes in your cloud environment, whether it's permission changes to roles, new assets in the environment, new networks, removed assets, etc. So here's what you can see on the left side as we scroll through this. The red team view is directly aligned to the timeline view, and you see the description of each step on the left, and on the right is where you see the actual commands that an attacker would have and could have used to, in this case, we start off by exploiting and identifying the CVE, showing you the exploit code. Further on, as we move down through this, you'll see we actually provide you as well the malicious payload that was created and utilized in this example, so that you can literally run this playbook either by a single command or the entire playbook against your actual environment. But you'll see in the context of the cloud, again, as we continue to move through each step within the timeline, every single cloud command that would have been executed to carry out this attack, in this case, ending with data exfiltrated to the attacker's external workstation, to the cloud. Okay. One of the other key things that we include, right, because it's great to see these verified attacks that could take place against the environment if the entry point was breached, but the first question that inevitably is going to be asked by any team or manager in your environment: how do I prevent this attack from ever becoming real? What action do I need to take next to prevent this attack? And this is where, when we move over to the security advisor, we see things like remediation recommendations and suggestions. We see the full storyline of the attack in plain English. But the key here is really where we give you the actionability step or next step in terms of what action to take, what is actually enabling this attack to take place, what's at the root cause of it. And we can see here actually in the, very specifically in the second sentence, where it's the cause is because of the pass role permission was assigned to this role, we're able to assign a role to a new Lambda function and initiate that function, which is really the key to this entire attack, is that pass role permission, right? Lastly here, before we move over to the live alerting or CDR, one of the key things, and Jennifer mentioned in one of the slides as well, in terms of automation. So the blue team is really key in helping you pre-validate and pre-verify for your team what the alert is going to look like. Here, what you can see is, again, aligned to each of the timeline elements within the timeline of the attack. You can see each of the MBIs, as Skyhawk refers to them, or malicious behavior indicators. If we scroll through this full view of the MBIs, what you're seeing here and what you'll see in a moment when we move over to our actual alerts is this is very similar to what you would see is the full timeline of the alert and all of the sequenced MBIs showing you this what you would see for this full attack. So this enables you to pre-verify and test your auto response playbooks, right? To really give you the comfort and the knowledge of exactly when in a similar live alert that you would see in your system, when you would want to initiate that auto response action, right? And whether that's completely automated or machine or human assisted, we leave that up to you. What we provide is the capability through webhook to initiate your playbooks that you manage and control. So you can completely control all of that automation, how much or how little in your environment. So let's take a look. Before we move completely off of the purple team, one of the things that I'll quickly review is the continuously updated and ongoing purple team assessment report that you'll have at your hands as well. And again, as those scenarios change in your environment based on changes that you make to the environment, and the system automatically updates whether those attacks are still valid or whether they actually change in terms of the number of permutations may increase or decrease from one day to the next. Here you can see in the top row of the assessment report, the number of scenarios that are currently open, the number of attack paths or permutations associated to those scenarios, and then finally we can see the crown jewels that are defined in the environment. And by the way, crown jewels can be defined automatically by the system in your environment through some integration that we have, for instance, with AWS Macy, and some of the default rules that are provided around business priority. Or you can very easily create your own and specify a specific asset that may be a crown jewel in your cloud environment. On the second row is where we'll see the top third-party or supply chain risks that have been assessed by the purple team in the environment, the top crown jewels that are at risk, and finally you'll see an attack breakdown by both impact and entry point. And lastly, a summary of the purple team scenarios or results that are currently open in the environment. All right, so let's now move over to back to this is where we began with the purple team. What I actually want to highlight as we move through this is, if you recall the slide that Jennifer showed before in terms of our architecture, our CDR, and that's what I'm literally going to show you in the UI, are those three layers of detection that we utilize in our system. And literally that first layer that sits between the native cloud trails, in this case, if we're talking about AWS, the first layer of our alerting looks for suspicious or anomalous events within each of those cloud trail entries, right? But none of these, this is that first layer, none of these are actual alerts. We provide you visibility into these potentially suspicious or anomalous behaviors. And not only do we risk score them, as you can see here, but you also get all of the forensics associated with that particular anomalous activity. Right? Now, so this is that first layer of AI and ML that's occurring within our alerting structure. The second layer, this is really where the magic happens with the sequencing of the alert that's provided in every single one of our alerts. So this is where really we start to impact the MTTI and MTTR that your analysts and threat hunters are really going to be impacted by in the environment. And this is what each and every one of our alerts looks like based on the actions taken by the user or the system in the particular case of the alert. But here you can see the system does all of the stitching together or sequencing of each action as the user moves through your system. I can also very quickly bring up the detail of each of these actions within the alert. And this is where, as well, you'll see Skyhawk separates ourselves from standard alerts and provides right in the alert and right in each of the steps of the alert all of the forensics associated with that particular action. In this case, the anomalous AWS usage activity by the particular user here that you can see. So we show you things like all the forensics and IOCs here, like first-time API calls that were utilized, non-typical for this user, and also some of the other invocation details here, things like user agent, source IP, etc. I can also very quickly switch over to my table view, and what I would refer to typically as more of an analyst or hunter view, where I can very quickly see and expand the details throughout that entire sequence of the alert, and see on every step here all of the forensics and details that you see. Everything from anomalous behavior that you saw earlier, if I scroll back up, right, to a non-typical source country being utilized by the user in this case, in terms of access, an unusual or not usual activity time, where all this activity is taking place for this particular user. So a lot of IOBs are included in the alert as well, along with IOCs. The other thing that's included, if you recall from the purple team, is the security advisor. Now, in the security advisor in our alerts, this is really that third layer, besides the additional risk scoring that we utilize, is from a Gen AI perspective, the third layer of that alerting is where you get, in plain English, for every single alert, a summary and the detailed storyline. And this is, we've gotten tremendous feedback from our customers in terms of when we talk about upskilling and making the SOC and analysts more efficient in the SOC, right? In terms of creating incident reports or management reports of a particular incident or alert, this is a huge time saver where instead of starting from a blank screen or Word doc, I have all of the detail of the incident already created for me. So a quick copy paste can create that incident or management report. But the last thing I wanted to quickly point out here that I didn't when we first were looking at the timeline is the system will also show you time gaps by the user in the system and in this particular alert. So also representative of dwell time in the system. So really insight end to end into not only the particular behaviors and forensics, but also things like dwell time are represented in the alert as well.
Hey, Gene, can you go back to that for just 1 second?
Sure.
Yeah, the other thing I just want people to notice, because we talked about all the information that can be sorted through, and I know Gene hit on this, but just to emphasize the point, like if you look here in the non-typical API calls and first-time API calls,
Yep.
in other solutions, I'm not saying each one of those will be an alert, but they're going to be more than one. And then, and in our solution, these are all, we show like from this one user, Dennis Wilson, he did these 4 first-time API calls and 6 non-typical API calls. So it puts those all together to tell you, hey, Dennis Wilson is doing some things that he doesn't normally do. And that's just one part of an alert. And so that's part of the efficiency that we're delivering to the SOC, that we're putting this all together for you in a single activity that's just part of an alert. And I think that I just want to emphasize that.
Yeah, that's a really great point, Jennifer. And you know, we could even highlight it by saying that literally you can see that, right? If we go back to activities for a moment, in most systems that we still look at and our customers look at and tell us, right? Many times these activities are generating a single. Each of these activities is generating a single alert in their environment.
Yeah.
One other thing I'll mention, or actually 2 other things I'll quickly mention as well. You can also see in our alerts are continue to be updated in near real time in terms of the user actions. So if this user continues to perform additional malicious actions, the alert will actually be updated with an additional activity that you would see here and grow. The other thing that you'll see in this alert is that there was actually our webhook capability to invoke an auto response playbook in this environment was actually initiated as part of this alert. So you can see an example of that as well, and you'll be able to really clearly see in each alert when an auto response was utilized or not utilized, and you'll have documented proof of that as well. So just wanted to to point that out to you. And the last thing I'll mention, Jennifer, you kind of was hinting around at it in terms of in terms of alert fatigue, if you will, and just the sheer number of alerts that analysts and hunters are having to deal with in the SOC every day. One of the other key things that you'll see our system does as well is that we take advantage of historical logs in the environment. So when you onboard our system and we start ingesting, for instance, whether it's CloudTrails with AWS or activity logs with Azure, what we'll also do is if there are historical logs available to us, the system will automatically actually use those logs and show you literally a historical retrospective, and you'll see the actual alerts that the system would have presented to you and actually made alerts to you. So you'll literally, if you provide the system with the last 3 months of logs, we will literally show you, the system will show you the last 3 months of alerts in Skyhawk that we would have promoted in the system to actual alerts. So it's also a great way to compare, is my point here. You can literally see what we would have provided you for actual alerts over the last 3 months in my example, versus what you're utilizing today. So literally out of the box, you can compare our system to whatever you're using.
Yeah, awesome.
So let me stop there, Jennifer. And there's so much more that we could talk about.
Yeah.
What I would invite is all of our attendees is if you've seen even 5% of something that looks interesting, I would highly recommend to engage us and let's follow up on a one-on-one call with you and really dive into this in detail with you from a demo perspective.
Yeah, for sure. So just to close, so you saw in the demo, not just on the slides, but actually in the product, that you can respond to clear threats at machine speed. The automation is going to improve your productivity. You have all the information there to identify actual weaponized threats, to make it easy to communicate to the cloud team, the dev team, the SOC team, all the teams that you're working with, and delivering work-life balance to you. So, and as Jean mentioned, we have a couple ways that you can engage with us. So we have the Purple Team Assessment, that report that Jean showed you. We offer that at no charge if you want to see what the product would look like. It's a really simple process. And we also have a free 30-day subscription. So you can try the full product for free, and there's a link at the end of our blog, so you can contact us directly as well. And then lastly, if you're going to be at reInvent, we're going to be there too. Jean and I will actually both be there, booth 2152. So if you want to stop by and get, ask a few more questions, get a more detailed demo, that's just a few weeks away. But in the meantime, certainly reach out for a more in-depth demo or the Purple Team Assessment, or if you want to try the product. So with that, I will take some questions, and a couple came in. So Jean, I think this one's for you. What is the onboarding process like for the product?
Yeah, great question. Great question. I mean, it is, it's very light. Literally, the onboarding process, the first thing we do is what we call account onboarding. So whether it's whatever cloud it is, Azure, Google, AWS, we onboard the account, and this literally is the account onboarding is about 6 clicks between the AWS console and the Skyhawk interface. Basically, what we have you do in the case of AWS is create a role that gets the Skyhawk account and our external ID. So you create a cross-account role, as we refer to it, where you're trusting Skyhawk. We always only have read-only access to your cloud, and also one of the things that we do is we have no software or agents to be deployed into your cloud. And then the second part of that, once we onboard the account, is we simply onboard the logs, which is maybe another 10 to 15 minute process to onboard. You point us to the S3 buckets where your CloudTrails are and flow logs, or flow logs, they're optional. And we create a notification so that we see updates to logs, and in another 10 minutes we're done. So literally in about 20 minutes, we'll have you completely on board.
Great. Yeah, and actually, I don't know that we mentioned that enough during the webinar, that it's an agentless solution because we're pulling logs. So there's nothing within your environment that we need to
Yeah.
put in there for monitoring. Okay. So the purple team assessment, Gene, another question for you. So what does that process kind of look like?
Yeah, that's just as easy actually. For the purple team assessment, we'll set up an initial meeting with you. We typically schedule it for an hour to answer questions and go through any detail that you'd like to ask us about in the product. Sometimes it turns into partly a demo, but literally again, the onboarding, the actual onboarding portion of that first meeting takes between 5 to 10 minutes. And the purple team, specifically the red team, is continuously running and working. And we typically start to see purple team results, like we went through as an example today, within a few hours of onboarding.
Nice.
And then we'll, as part of the purple team assessment, we'll set up a second call. We'll kind of review the results together and next steps. And literally that's it.
Okay, great. And then the last question I can answer. So it's what's the pricing model? So we price per cloud asset. And there is some consolidation, like one Lambda function is not considered a cloud asset. It's multiple functions. So, but for the most part, it's per cloud asset. And we have definitions of what qualifies as a cloud asset, and you can reach out to us if you have more questions on that. So those were let me just double check. Yep, so those were the only questions that we had. So thank you so much for joining us today. Gene, thank you for an excellent demo as always.
Thank you, Jennifer. And thank you for an excellent presentation as always. And the intro to Skyhawk. That was great.
Thanks. Okay, so
and I hope, for all our attendees, I hope we see you all at reInvent. As Jen mentioned, we'll both be there. Would love to meet you in person.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, thank you everyone and have a great day. Bye.
Bye-bye.